begin. We'll get going here. That's very loud. It's okay. It'll do. People can hear. It got quiet all of a sudden. Okay, so I'm Pam Matheson. I'm co-chair along with Varian Thompson of the Wellness Committee. We're glad to have you here this evening. How many of you have heard of a doula? How many of you have heard of the term birth doula? Okay, how many of you have heard of the term death doula? Oh, more than I expected. Well, we're very, very happy to have Amy Sweet here with us today. She is the founder and CEO of Halcyon Home Care, and she's actually a trained doula, death doula herself. She's also a physician's assistant, and between her second and third child, she actually birthed a company, now known as Halcyon Home Care. It's been in existence about 14 years. She's been recognized by Austin Woman as having the fourth largest women's owned business in the Central Texas area. She's also been deemed Entrepreneur of the Year. I don't know which year, but she can address that. But she's here to talk to us about an overview of what a death doula is, what they can do for people, and to help you walk through some of that, and then we'll have time for questions and answers at the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Can you all hear me okay? Yep. Is it good? It is such an honor to be at Westminster. I love this community, and I started providing home care here at Westminster 14 years ago. And I'm really honored that we are still here providing care to so many people that live here, and I love the quality of this organization. I think it's my favorite in Central Texas, but don't tell anyone because everybody else likes to think that they're my favorite too. But this community is really special to my heart. I think it is so well run, and it has the greatest group of people that I just really enjoy interacting with and being with, and the staff is so great here, and all of you that really put a lot of intention into finding topics to expand your horizons, learn new things. I learned what a death doula was about 5 years ago, and I didn't know what it was. And so it's so exciting to learn new things and then share them with others. And I hope I'm learning new things my whole life, and people are getting to teach me about the things they're learning. So it's very exciting to be here today with all of you and to share what I've learned through this process and what a death doula is. So, I guess just a tiny bit more about me. Pam did a great job of introducing me, but I've been working as a PA for over 25 years, a physician assistant, and worked in geriatrics. First, I started in oncology and palliative care, and then went into geriatrics, and that's where I really saw the need with my own family and my work of needing better care and better places to work for, because there weren't a lot of places that were clinician owned and that provided a really healthy work environment for nurses and clinicians to work. And so I wanted to be a place people wanted to work, and where we really wanted to focus 100% on patient care. So that's what I did, started it, and here we are. I majored in nutrition in college and became a nutritionist. Then I went to grad school and became a PA. And I honestly have no idea when I first heard about what a death doula was, but I had had a birth doula, and I actually birthed all 3 of my children at home with a midwife. And so along that journey, I think I'd had 2 kids at home, back to back, a year apart. And then I started Halcyon Home, and I had the honor of being at a few deaths in those first few years, and every time I was at a death, it reminded me so much of my birth. I just could never stop thinking about it when I was there. I was, always thinking about, gosh, this breathing reminds me of how I was breathing, and how long one was reminded me of how long one was, and then one was really fast and it reminded me how fast my second was. And so every death I was at, I would think about something that related and triggered a memory of me having my children. And so I think whenever I first heard of this, I don't honestly remember how or why, if it was a TED Talk or an article, it definitely immediately triggered something in me, I'm interested in that because I had always been thinking about it in terms of my own birth. And so I looked up how you could learn more about it, and I found a course and a certification through the University of Vermont in 2021. We were coming out of COVID. We were working a little bit more remote, and there was a remote class to take. And so I became a certified death doula, and then I immediately wanted to start training my staff because I thought everyone needs to know this work and this information. And so I started teaching a class on it. I've revised it. I've retaken the course at even the University of Vermont to get more content because I just love it, and it has just become a real passion of mine to continue to educate and then to continue to practice and do the work as well, because I find it to be some of the most rewarding work I've ever done. Even with all the other great things I do and helping people, this one has extra special meaning to me, and so I really enjoy it. So that is, that's kind of how it happened, is just being interested and relating to it and then learning and then teaching, right? In medicine, they say see one, do one, teach one. And so I think it's the best way to really learn something is you see it, you do it, and then you teach it, and then you really can experience all the different ways and continue to hone in on your skills. So what is a death doula? A death doula is a trained non-medical professional who offers spiritual and emotional and practical support to individuals and families through their end-of-life journey. So sometimes people call it an end-of-life doula. There's an end-of-life now movement, they say, and there's an end-of-life organization now in the United States to kind of start helping to actually support end-of-life doulas. So some people are calling it that, I would say, a little bit more frequently now than death doula. They're starting to call them end-of-life doulas. And it's rooted in the same companioning that happens in birth. And it complements, it never replaces medical care or true hospice services, which includes a lot of medical care. And so it really focuses on the emotional, physical, and practical support. And there is definitely, we'll talk a little bit as we go, sometimes an overlay to some of the things that hospice provides and some of the things that they don't. So we'll get into the granular details of that as we go. But that is what an end-of-life doula is. And why is it important? Well, as you know, there's a lot of aging people in the world, and there's a lot of cancer. It's a #1 cause of death for many people, and so there's a lot of people that get to know that they're going to not live for much longer than there used to be. You know, a lot of people 100 years ago died most frequently during birth, so you had no knowledge whether you were going to make it or not. So Russian roulette was birth. Childhood illnesses from viral diseases was actually the #1 killer in the early 1900s as people were dying. Children would die in infancy. Then it was death, and then it was accidents. So we've really changed a lot over the years, as now we have the #1 things being cancer, things we have some kind of knowledge that something is going to be terminal, but we are still alive. So we have more than hours or days to prepare. We have months or years for the majority of the population. So that's a big difference from even 50 years ago. I'm always reminded that when Medicare was started, the age 65 was 1 year younger than the average length of age in the United States, which was 66. So Medicare, when I think of how it was maybe originally thought of by the people that funded it that year, and those congressmen that passed that budget under LBJ, thought we're going to be paying for people on average for 1 year. And what a difference we are just, 50 years later or 70 years later, our average age is now in the 80s, and there are many people living into their 90s and even hundreds. So very different than where we were 100 years ago and even 50 years ago. So this role is becoming more prevalent, impactful, relevant to society because we have more time now to think about something before it happens. So that's one reason it's relevant. Another one is our healthcare system is very fragmented. If any of you I'm sure all of you navigate it, and you probably have had some experience where one person isn't talking to the other, or something is confusing. Maybe you're even having trouble with the technology of how to save something, make sure you haven't lost it, know where all your things are. There are so many fragmented parts of the healthcare system, from durable powers of attorney, medical powers of attorney, wills, trusts, bank accounts, investment accounts. I mean, there's just a lot of things going on. Then there's family dynamics. Then there's, until hospice, because a lot of people don't have hospice till the very end, there's a lot of different doctors that you're dealing with up until that point. So there's a lot of fragmented care and not a lot of support to navigate all that with really trained people who know all the parts of the system. So having someone who's really familiar with that can be really helpful. Medicalized dying is becoming more frequent in parts of the United States. I was on with someone in California today, totally randomly, nothing to do with Healthy on Home or work, and he was just telling me how his brother-in-law had a medicalized death a few weeks ago, and I was like, wow, something that we've never experienced. I've never experienced yet that in Texas, so don't even, but some people can plan when they have a terminal illness that, you know, they want to do it on X date, and so they can hire someone to help them get all organized and say it's going to happen on this date. We don't have that, but it is definitely becoming more institutional in some ways, and being able to plan and having someone help you with that is relevant. And then people are seeking more personalized experiences. We're going to talk more about that at the end with your own personalized experience, but finding something that really represents you, even in the last year, months, days, hours of life, is really special. That's why I wanted a home birth in a lot of ways. Was one, I believed in the quality of the experience, but I also loved that kind of I got to control it. I got to have who I wanted there. I got to have what music I wanted, what flowers I wanted. I got to do it in the water. You know, you get to pick all the things you want to do, and you don't get to have all those choices in an emergency-like setting, right? You have to go by the emergency. So we don't get to choose if we're gonna die in a car accident or if we need a C-section, but if we get the choice, what would we want it to be like? And so that's where this kind of personalized medicine comes, is if we get the chance to be so lucky to be able to be in our own home and in our own bed, what would we like it to be like? And you get to do that with an end-of-life doula. So that's why the role matters. And what the scope of practice is a death doula does provide emotional companion care, end-of-life planning, legacy work, educating families on the dying process, coordinating practical and logistical support, and supporting families. They do not provide any clinical care, prescribe or manage medicines, replace nursing care, palliative care, offer legal, financial advice, or make any care decisions, clinical decisions for the patient. So, I'm going to show you a quick video about an experience of an end-of-life doula as highlighted in our news. So let me have it.
You can sell this $5.
I screwed up. Yeah, I had it all ready to go and I messed it up. Sorry, my technology skills. Here we go.
It's a sensitive and difficult conversation that so many of us will have to have.
It's also the job of an end-of-life doula. Just as a birth doula helps bring new life into the world, a death doula helps patients and families as they prepare for the end.
We had a situation where our 3 sons were all graduating. That was kind of our goal, to make it to their graduations.
Did she?
There are times in one's life as a parent that you think about from the moment your babies are born. Sometimes those moments unfold exactly as you'd expect, but in the case of Lisa Stoppin Moriello, forming those core memories had to be condensed into a few short months, the time between her ALS diagnosis and the day she passed.
She always looked forward to the first mother-son dance at a wedding, and she wanted to have that experience. So the Caroline Inn provided the ballroom and a DJ, and she was able to do her first dance with each of the boys. and I dance with her too.
Lisa was the poster woman of the working mom, a healthcare PR veteran, a mom of 3 sons, a wife of 25 years, a lover of life, a sister, a daughter, an advocate, a friend, a devoted athlete, a die-hard Tar Heel. All things taken in the blink of an eye when she was diagnosed with a rare and aggressive form of ALS. What began as an inability to yell for her dogs spiraled into total paralysis.
So we got to the point where really the only thing that she could move was slightly move her right foot and her eyes. So we had this thing where I would hold up this card and then she would look at me and I would just kind of go across if she wanted to say something. So I would go across, and if it started with C, you know, she would blink, and then I would say, okay, the first letter is C, and then I would go across.
The cruelty of an illness that steals your body but leaves your mind. Questions left unanswered, conversations left unspoken, and a mounting fear that time is running out. It's why Lisa wanted an end-of-life doula, somebody to unburden her family while helping to get her affairs in order.
And sometimes you want a little bit of a distance too, and be able to speak frankly with someone who is knowledgeable about the topic.
Just as a birth doula helps to bring a new life into the world, a death doula or an end-of-life doula helps a person peacefully transition out.
Everyone says it must be so depressing. How can you do this work? You're talking to people who are dying all the time. You're dealing with death. You're seeing death. But it's the opposite, because you really feel like you are helping the person and their loved ones through this process and educating about it.
Janie Rocco helped Lisa stop in Moriello as she absorbed the weight of her terminal diagnosis and organized her life in preparation for her death.
What a gift to give your loved ones when they know your wishes and they don't have to guess when you can no longer express that.
There's a lot that can go into the process of dying of a terminal diagnosis. Where will you pass away and who will be there with you? Will it be with the assistance of medication, which is legal in New Jersey, or only with the help of comfort medication? The intention of a death doula is to be an advocate for the patient, especially when their illness denies them the ability to do it for themselves. In addition to arranging hospice for Lisa and helping with the mounds of paperwork, one of Lisa's wishes was to leave something tangible for her boys. Together, Lisa and Janie worked to fill out these cards, accompanied by a handwritten memory that Bob, Dean, Luke, and Scott will be able to read whenever they want to feel closer to Lisa, closer to Mom.
These are for my youngest son, Dean, but starts with him coming home from the hospital and his 2 brothers, and you can see there's handwritten notes on the back. There's probably 40 or 50 of these.
And they each have a memory or a message from Lisa?
Yes. So Lisa actually, Janie helped guide Lisa for this and tell her what to do, but these were when Lisa was still able to write. This is her own handwriting.
And when ALS robbed Lisa of the ability to do it on her own, she dictated her messages to Janie.
Dean's high school graduation. I actually haven't opened any of these because I figure it's private between Lisa and Dean. But Dean's high school graduation, Dean's college graduation.
His 18th birthday.
21st birthday. 25th birthday.
Wow.
30th birthday. Wedding day.
Oh my goodness.
The birth of his first child.
It is but one part of Lisa's robust legacy.
Things wouldn't have happened without Janie.
We all know we're all headed towards dying at some point in our life. So why can't we have open, honest conversations just about that? And the more we normalize it, the more it's not such a frightening and scary thing.
So, I get teary-eyed watching it. I've watched it a lot of times. I still get teary-eyed. But very, very special to see with some intention what someone can do to leave a legacy for their children and grandchildren and have personalized things that make it, let's see, I'll get this back to being bigger. What did I do before? Oh, there we go. Maybe that's part of it. This should go. Come on. There we go. Okay. So that is a really good example of what a death doula, one of the things they can do is just really help a family create memories that are really special. And I know that that family is going to have much healthier children because their mom put some intention and had someone to give them some very special memories along the way, so that she's really part of their life even when she's not there anymore. And that's a real gift to give your kids, to continue to have advice, love, memories. I want those things, and my mom's here and I want all those things. I'm like, and I've done all those things and I still want. I'm like, can I capture all of that love that she's given me into some of those things that I can keep going? It's very special to have. So core responsibilities are to support with non-judgmental presence that honors the person's belief and their wishes and their fears. You know, they say the greatest thing in the world is to love and be loved in return. And sometimes to have somebody that just is so non-judgmental and just sees you for who you are is a gift, even up till the last moment that we're alive. That sometimes you can have some incredible, profound moments of joy that you've never experienced in your whole life, even in the last day, week, month. You'll see a video here at the end of somebody that I've seen this now more than once or twice or even 10 times. You will see someone who's 100 years old and says, I just had the best day of my whole life. So whether that's perspective or whether that is pure truth or whether that is their perceptive reality, to think that you can have a whole life of amazing things. This person got married and had children and had the birth of a grandchildren, and they said, this day, this is like tops them all. When you can do that, you just know you did something really special in the world for somebody to feel that way. And that the fact that we can continue to feel that way is such a lesson for all of us, that your happiest day could still be next year, next week, 5 years from now, and you haven't even experienced it yet. Even though you're having joy and you're dancing and you're having great times today, your best day can still be in the future. Is a very special thing to imagine and to look forward to plan for. So practical coordination, really finding out what's important to you and making it happen, almost like a personal assistant for the end of life, but to really listen and say, what is the most important things to you? And oh, by the way, I'll also help you get those to happen. Because a lot of us have great ideas, but making them happen is usually the really hard part. And so to have someone to take those, I know that I still have things in my life that I would love to get done that are not done. I have boxes of pictures I need organized. So every time I see this, I'm thinking, I hope I get a chance to get a death doula to organize them someday. I'm helping everybody else. Sometimes you don't spend the time to help yourself. But life review, recordings, rituals that preserve family rituals, meanings, and education, explaining things. Some people have fears that they really don't feel comfortable talking to someone about. And sometimes having someone that's completely separate from all of it is really helpful. People are sometimes even worried in a hospice team, if I say something, they're gonna judge me. My nurse is gonna not take the same care of me if I tell them something. They're worried. They don't need to be worried about that, but sometimes they are, and sometimes having someone that's separate is beneficial for some people. But this is the difference between a hospice team and a death doula team. We in hospice have to spend time with other patients, and we have other people we're taking care of. And with a death doula, you really do get a much more focused person for as much time as you want, because you're controlling it. And so with hospice, you don't necessarily get them to your to do all the things just with you to organize your pictures for day in and day out. So you get to have a much more private experience, and sometimes a much more meaningful, tailored death because you were able to actually verbalize it. I want every hospice provider to actually be doing end-of-life doula work and creating these personalized experiences, and I am trying to incorporate that into our hospice as the standard of care, but in no way right now is the standard of care to provide these very specialized end-of-life experiences. So that is a huge difference. Is typically right now, hospice care is, I would say, very standardized, and kind of we all do it the same way from a clinical perspective. A death doula perspective is how do I tailor it and make it completely individualized to you. Three phases of support with a death doula. So we've got the planning and preparation. You kind of got a feel for that, and what you saw in that video is all the planning and preparation you can do. Then there is the vigil, which is the active dying process, which can be anywhere from hours to days. And then there is the aftercare, kind of following up with some relationships and families that you've made close relationships with and supporting them with sometimes the things that you wanted to have happen. I really want you to, on my son's birthday next year, I think he might be struggling. I'd like you to send him flowers and drop by and bring him this note. They can do that kind of thing, and they can honor your desires, wishes, even after you're gone. So they can be very practical with making sure anything you want to happen afterward. You want a very special something afterward, celebration of life, they can help plan it. The benefits to the family, I kind of focused on this already, but really just centered on the person and not the illness. We try to do this in hospice, and I think we do a decent job at it, where we have chaplain support and social work support. But ultimately, I would say a lot of what we do is very practical and clinically driven. We want to make sure that all of your symptoms are managed, the funeral home is planned, the DNR is there. It's very practical, immediate, necessary work. But this greater sense of who are you and is there anything left in life you want to do, and how do I make it really special and personalized? I think as an overall overarching picture of hospice, we don't do a good job with that. And there's a lot of, and maybe that's not even a great use of Medicare dollars. I'm not saying we should even do those things and spend that time, but that's not part of right now what the hospice benefit is. It's much more like, let's get all these immediate needs met. It's not, how do I create an incredible experience and a legacy for my family? So that is what this work can do. Room for meeting, closure, and connection. Less caregiver burnout and isolation. How so many of us have our daughters and sisters helping, and aunts and uncles helping. Sometimes there's a lot of burnout with families, and having someone to help is great. Benefits to our team. It is incredible. I will tell you that the best deaths I have ever been at have had an end-of-life doula present, because there is something about somebody who takes the time to plan and state their wishes that just creates an environment that is really beautiful for everyone. So it's a true partner to us when we have that at the end of life. It extends support beyond and between all our visits, right? There's someone still involved that knows what's going on. There's less emotional burden on our staff because the person has really additional support, and it can really improve family communication because you kind of have a person devoted to that family, saying everything we're saying to everybody else and making sure that's all doing it. And it does free us up to focus on medical care. I like to think that really hospice should do all these things as well, but this adds an additional layer of definite personalization. So when to involve a death doula? Earlier is better. anytime that we all are going to die at some point. So the more organized and prepared we are, the better. Sometimes as I give these, I think maybe by the time I could do these in a year or two, I'll have done all this work myself, because you never know. The reality is we never know when we're gonna die. And I love all these things so much. I will say I've written letters to all my children throughout these processes, and do have a lot of my affairs in order because of the work I do. I've been really, I remember one time we were changing our will, and I was so nervous that somehow I was gonna die before I was not finished with these changes, and that I would be this like horrible example of like, my company would be like, God, she didn't plan all these like loose ends. I was like, don't die on the plane because we didn't sign some paperwork. But everything in my life in general, minus, a few extra touches, I will say I've done a lot of this work. There's still more things I want to do, but it is very freeing to know that I've done a lot of this work for my children, for my company, for my, and it feels really good. I've written my own obituary. I've done a lot of this work because of what I do. I've gotten to do a lot of these things, and it is very freeing. There is something about the joy when you focus on the moment and you've done all the other stuff that does free you up. So anytime I think you are just wanting to live your life, almost for me, it says when you have a terminal illness, but I will say for me, maybe because I've done this work for so long, I wanted to get everything done so that I could just be free to live in the moment and know that I've taken care of everything I know to take care of for today. But whenever you have a truly life-limiting illness, like if I knew I was gonna die in 6 months from today, there are more things I would do now that, I may not do if I know I'm gonna live for another 20 years or 10 years. So, but definitely when know that you have a life-limiting illness, 6 months or less is a great time to involve someone like this. But I sometimes think, like even while I was talking today, like I'm gonna get a death doula to finish a few things I haven't done that I've been thinking about. Doula work is generally not covered by Medicare or private insurance. Most doulas charge an hourly rate. Some of them will also charge per project, with some things like you're gonna do an end-of-life ceremony after you're not here anymore. They may charge a flat fee to say, I'm gonna do this for you afterward. And I think it's gonna be 10 hours or something like that. So we do have a volunteer doula program, and we do offer some doulas through our hospice program. They're through the volunteer part of our program, and we also offer some that are paid as well. But the most important thing about this is to make sure you always ask up front what it's going to entail, and that they have some sort of credible reference so that you're not, I just am always suspicious of scams out there, and you just want to make sure you know they've done something before somewhere, and that you're not bringing someone into your life that is somehow not a reputable person, because there are so many fake scams out there. But as long as I would say you know somebody that they've provided work for before, and or they come from a company that at least has insurance and has some protections to protect you, those are two really good ways to just make sure that they're legitimate. But get the scope and the fees up front, and make sure that you are clear about what you want and how much they're gonna charge for that in writing. So, start before there's a problem. Adult children should know what their parents want in writing, and make sure these conversations are normal. They say the one thing we all have in common is that we all are gonna die. It's like the one thing we're all gonna have in common, no matter what. And so, have we talked to our kids about this? Have we talked to our parents about it? Does everyone know? You all in this room are probably some of the more educated and planned people in the world in general. There are a lot of people that have never had that conversation ever and feel like it's uncomfortable or taboo. And I think that that's really hard for the adult children, because they may think it's uncomfortable. Everything's uncomfortable to my teenagers. They don't want to talk about anything. So I kind of feel like sometimes adult children act like teenagers when you start talking about death and dying. It's like, oh, I don't want to hear about that, Mom. That's everything in my house right now. Don't talk to me. But that's kind of how people are about death and dying, is they don't really want to talk about it. Oh, we're a long way from that. It's like, yes, but I just want to talk about what I want when that time comes. Because the reality is we never know when that's going to be. And so you know what, I just want to talk about it. I want to share what is important to me, and then we don't need to talk about it again if you don't want to, but it's really important that I talk about it. And that these conversations are normal. You're gonna have this happen to you, and I'm gonna have it happen to me, and I wanna talk about it. So having that conversation, the relief it will eventually add to your children's lives is profound, because they may not even know how stressed they're gonna feel. And once they have those conversations, when the time comes where something's happening that they really didn't want to think about, they really didn't know what they were going to feel like, and they know what you wanted, or you know what they wanted, either way, the relief in knowing that you're doing something that honors that person is really profound. And so just being able to have 20 to 30-minute conversation once or twice in your life can literally cause some lasting positive effects instead of some lasting traumatic effects. Because there are a lot of people that sit with a lot of guilt of just not knowing, and not knowing if they made the right decision because they didn't know. And so just being able to know I did what I think somebody wanted, there's a lot of value in that, and a lot of calm and peace that you provide when you just are doing what you think somebody knew. And it's just really normal to be able to talk about and ask, because we're all gonna do it. So healthcare wishes, it's not just paperwork, it's not just a DNR and a MOST form. It's not just, do you want a feeding tube or do you want a ventilator? There are a lot of other things, as probably all of you have witnessed living in senior living communities, that are other things that can happen besides a do not resuscitate after you stop breathing, and whether you're gonna be on a ventilator, which most people are not on. So there's a lot of other discussions about, do I want to continue antibiotics if I can't walk or talk anymore? Do I want to live in a nursing home? Do I want to continue eating if I no longer can talk? There's some other things that you can talk to someone about and say, these are kind of how I feel, and I want you to feel really comfortable making these decisions if you ever have them. Do you have all of the paperwork for your finances? And do you have all the paperwork for, trusts and all those things? A lot of people don't know about what a pain in the something is when you have to go into probate. And I hope no one here ever has to have their kids go through that whole experience. They don't know if they're not on hospice and they die, that you have to involve the sheriff, and you won't be able to have hours in the home with your loved one if you want it. Like, there's just things people don't know, and it's like, once you can know those things, you can give somebody such a better experience because you talked about it. I have so many families that they go, gosh, I wish we just talked about this once, because I wouldn't be sitting here dealing with 6 months of paperwork if we would have done this. And so it's more than just like the DNR or the out of hospital, which is an out of hospital DNR, or I have this thing that says I don't want a feeding tube or a ventilator. There's a lot more things that can really go into making someone's transition from this life to the next life really smooth. And there are a lot of things that can make it very long and tedious for people. And if you can have someone say, how can I make this smooth? You probably, a lot of you, how many of you here, just interactive, all have all of these paperwork done? Feel like you have every single thing done. Okay, not the whole room. So there might be some, room for to learn a few things. Not even half of you raised your hand. So there might be some things that you can do to make it a lot easier for you. And a lot of people just don't want to think about it or talk about it, but in doing that, you're creating a lot of work for someone on the other side. So that's healthcare wishes. Everything is organized. The MOST form, or a POST form, is a form that is a legal form that you can list all of your healthcare wishes on. It's something that's very popular in about 30 states. It's recognized. Texas is not one of the states where it's, what do you know, we're a little behind in healthcare around here, but about 30 states recognize it as like the most common legal form to say what you want as you, if you're in a medical crisis. Like, do you want IVs? Do you want antibiotics? Do you want to be hospitalized long-term? Do you want SNF care if it's for more than a year? Like, there's just some specific things on it, and we don't have that, but you could use it in Texas to say what you want your wishes are. You still have to have the medical power of attorney form to make it legal in Texas, but it's a really good one to just be able to list everything out so that everyone knows. So we use it a lot as a guide. It's just not the legal form, but in most of the country, it's now a legal form that you can bring in, like you bring in and out of hospital DNR, and everyone knows what you want. So that's what the most or post form is. Passwords. Oh, what do you think about that? Insurance policies. Can you imagine how hard it is sometimes to find those? I mean, these are things like, if you're not there, where are they gonna find it? I found someone the other day that had a Bitcoin investment. Guess what happens if you lose that password? You lose every dollar that's in there. And guess what? They were having a hard time finding the password. So these are the kinds of things that people sometimes don't realize until they kind of sit down and think about how many things they have in different places that they haven't thought about. And so is there a really organized way for someone to find everything and all the important things? Sometimes you have some of it, but not all of it. And so getting it all organized is very underrated and very helpful. Roles and expectations. You know, if you talk about things, you have so much less resentment later. And so being able to talk about things, how costs are going to be divided, just being honest and open, it's really helpful. Loss of independence. You know, this is where at the very end it gets a lot harder and is more emotionally loaded for everyone, because everyone wants to be in control of everything. And this is where, if you've put into writing the things you really like and that are really important to you, everyone can do a much better job of giving you some sense of control, even when you have very little independence. There's, you know, even with her blinking her eye, she could have a sense of independence of some things that she wanted and didn't want. And we're gonna go over in a minute that form, but you know, I've had so many people tell me, one of my fears in life is that someone's gonna put lavender around me, and lavender gives me migraines. Or I'm gonna have this awful vanilla scent, and I hate vanilla, and I won't be able to tell anyone because I'm gonna be out of it. So when you have voiced your wishes, it gives you a sense of independence that even when you can't share what you want, you know we're doing it. You know we're not putting vanilla, or you know we're not gonna be playing, you know, classical music. You hate classical music. You really, really want jazz. I know some people that hate jazz and go, oh, it grates on me. It's so off, you know, the chords are all off. Yes, they are, it's for a reason. But if you hate that, how awful would it be if that's what we were somehow playing as relaxing music and you're like that, so that grates on me. So getting to be able to voice what's important to you gives you a sense of control even up to your last breath. Respect versus reality. Adult children, you know it's really hard as you lose your independence to have your kids want to come in and say, oh, let me help with this, or, you know, we know everyone means well, but it can be really hard to balance that relationship, and it can be sometimes really nice to just say, you know what, I have this person managing this is what they're doing, so you just get to be my kid, let's just have that relationship. Sometimes it's really nice to just separate those two things so that there isn't such a clash of safety or cognition, and you don't have to feel like someone is telling you what to do. You can feel like, I just want to be the mom and you be the son, and I have someone else handling all the other things. And then this end of life plan, we're gonna go over some of this in a minute with all of you, about really getting to know yourself, kind of thinking about what is important to me, what are the people I really want around, what are the people I don't want around. Sometimes it's almost more important to know what you don't like than what you do. That's a good place to start. You can write a list of things I don't like. And then it allows you to kind of think about, oh, well, if I don't like that, I'd be okay with this. Because sometimes you're like, I don't know what I like. If you're like me, I like a lot of things. So I'm like, oh, I like everything. But you think about the things I don't like, sometimes that can help narrow down what you don't want. What do you want your celebration of life to be like? You know, it's really nice for someone to know that, so that you don't do something that you really don't like. Yes, you won't be here. So there is that. You won't be here to complain about it. But how much more special is it when we're doing something that we know someone wanted? That gives that other person a real sense of purpose and joy. And then they have something they're doing that honors you. And that makes that other person feel good. So by telling someone what you want, you're actually spreading positive energy into the next life of what you want, and it makes another person feel joy and goodness and purpose. So when you can do those things, you're really spreading love into the world. So that's some of the beauty of doing end-of-life planning work, is you're really sending messages into the next generation of things that are going to bring them joy, peace, positive memories. One of the things they say about birth is, in a traditional birth with pain meds, the last thing a mother remembers is extreme pain before she gets an epidural. So she always thinks childbirth is painful. When you have a natural birth, the last thing you remember is this incredible rush of endorphins. And what people talk about is how wonderful it was. And people that have had a traditional birth go, what are they talking about? There was nothing wonderful, because they never got the feeling of the emotional rush of endorphins that pounds your body, and you have this memory that's positive. It's a weird thing, because I remember the last one going, this one, there's no way I'm gonna have a positive memory of it, and I have total positive memories of it now. Took a few weeks, but you have these amazing memories. And so that's the kind of thing that you're doing when you put all of this energy into a end-of-life plan, is you are actually creating positive memories to be shared for the generations to come, which is very impactful. So we have a program at Halcyon called Fishin' for Wishes. It was started by Molly Nedley, who's here tonight in the crowd. And that is what we do now when we do the end-of-life work, is we always say that we're fishing for wishes. And we try and make those wishes come true. So we're like the Make-A-Wish Foundation, except for, Central Texas. Seniors instead of children. So this man, Mehdi, spent his 97th birthday surrounded by bluebonnets, and we're gonna show you a little bit about it, fulfilling a final wish to spread his wife's ashes in the bluebonnets that she loved with the flowers that she loved to paint. So we asked him what was his favorite memories of his life, what would brought him the most joy. And he said watching his wife paint bluebonnets in the spring. That was kind of one of their rituals that he brought him the most joy. And so then when we also asked him what was his thing he wanted to do before he died, he's like, well, I still haven't spread her ashes, and I want to do it in the bluebonnets. So we arranged a special day for him, and I'm going to share that with you.
Great. Such a beautiful day. Thanks for everybody.
Happy birthday, Eddie!
So that was, he said, the most perfect day of his life at the end of that day. And his nephew called to tell me that he'd never seen him so happy in his whole life. He said he just can't stop talking about what a perfect day it was, that it brought back every memory of his whole life into that one day, and he was just overjoyed with happiness. So fun that you can do that at 97 and dance and celebrate and have such wonderful memories at every age. And this gentleman here had wanted to ride in a Thunderbird as his final wish. And the reason he wanted to ride in a Thunderbird is he had bought his first car, which was a 1967 Thunderbird, and he had to sell it when he was 19 years old to help his mother pay the rent. And he said when he tried to buy it back, because he made the money to buy it back, it had been involved in a bank robbery, and he couldn't buy it back because it was like, had something, I mean, I don't know, this is the 60s in Texas, so who knows. But we reached out to find a 1967 Thunderbird for him to ride in, and a group of veterans was able to reach out via like social media and said, we have one. And so then we arranged to have this day, and they heard he was a veteran, and so they decided to get a whole lot of Thunderbirds. So they ended up having a parade of Thunderbirds, and we showed up outside his nursing home, and he was very sick by this point because he didn't live very long on our hospice, and we didn't have a lot of time. And he said, I'm too weak to even go to the window. And we said, no, you've got to go to the window. We have a 1967 Thunderbird outside. And he goes, where are my Ray-Bans? So he got outside and in this car and had a parade down the street. And he died 2 days later. And his daughter has now become a death doula and a hospice volunteer because of this experience. And she remembers this last month of his life with so much joy. She doesn't think of it as sad, she thinks of it as wonderful, and that it brought her so much meaning and joy, and she wants to do that for others. It also inspired our nurse, Lindsay, to also become a death doula. She said she'd been a hospice nurse for 10 years, and she literally never really felt like she knew what she was doing until she took this course. And she said now she shows up with so much joy and purpose because she knows how to make a difference. And not just the medical clinical part, but make these memories that last with her and make her enjoy her work more, as well as obviously make the families happy and the patients happy. So talk about a win-win in life. They say you want a win-win in business. This is like a win-win-win for life. So that is what end-of-life doulas are. And I'm going to open it up for questions. So thank you all for such rapt attention. I'm so honored to be here, and thank you.
Any questions? Any questions?
Oh, can you hear me now? Yeah, I'm wondering how soon or late people start having a death doula. I mean, I know it varies a lot.
I would say in general, not until the last 3 to 6 months of someone's life is normal. But I don't think that needs to be that way, but I'm just telling you what's normal. Some of them only have a couple weeks. I don't know why people wait so long. It's very interesting, our human psyche. We're procrastinators, I think, as a race. But usually it's in the last 3 to 6 months. The video shown where someone did it for a year and was really intentional is unique, and I think the more time you have, the better a job you can do with it.
What was the name of the form that you said?
Yeah, it's the MOST form, M-O-S-T, like most. And it's online. If you just Google MOST form, or everyone will see it. It's a great form to have in your documents.
Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't that one that's also signed by your doctor and is considered a medical order?
Yes, it is considered a medical order in most states. Texas is a little weird sometimes about it. It will definitely be helpful, even if Texas doesn't totally acknowledge it as a legal form. They will follow the wishes of it and they'll figure it out, but technically it's not a legal form in Texas like it is in like 30 states. But it is still very helpful in physicians making decisions. You know, we have what we do in Texas. We're so backwards in certain little areas in Texas, but what we do in Texas is we have a medical ethics committee, and that's who makes your decisions when there's questions. And basically, if you have that form, they'll just follow that form, but they'll be the ones making it. It won't be the form doing it, but they'll follow those same wishes. So it's really a technicality. So yes, it will work is the bottom line.
My question is, assuming an individual has a family member who's a medical power of attorney and durable power of attorney, what jurisdiction might the death doula have if the family is not agreeing as things unfold?
Well,
and if the person is more and more ill?
Well, specifically, death doulas do not make medical decisions or financial or legal decisions. So the medical power of attorney would still make all the medical, financial, and legal decisions. But if you have very clearly documented and paid for certain things to happen, then the odds of those not happening would be pretty low. Like, I would think it'd be very unusual for someone to make other decisions if you very clearly have in writing what you want. Hopefully you're putting someone as your medical and durable power of attorney that would listen to your wishes if they're written down. You know, they say in relationships, most relationships fail because they're not clear agreements and that you're not following those clear agreements. That's the basis of trust. And so if you have it very clear, so many things, so many family dynamics are because things are not clear and they're not written down. And so then there's debate about what someone wants or doesn't want. And one child thinks something and another child thinks something. But if you have it written down and you have a plan, this is what I want for my dad. This is what I want for my last 6 months. This is what I want to spend my money on after my death. Like, it's pretty unusual to go against that. In fact, I don't know that I've ever seen someone go directly against something that's written down. I've only seen people fight about what they don't know and what they're assuming.
I'm curious how effective a death doula can be in a situation where the patient is experiencing cognitive issues, but it said one of the ways to know when to call them is if family members are feeling overwhelmed.
Yes.
So if you've got caregivers, adult children or spouse that are feeling overwhelmed and they call in the death doula, but the patient themselves are not really able to be too involved. Does that work at all, or?
It's a really good question, and I would say that the one thing when you have a trained professional coming and supporting someone with cognitive impairment is that there are, right up until your last breath, even people with cognitive impairment have desires and wishes and want to be in control. And so sometimes what I see a lot with adult children is that they don't know how to handle people with cognitive impairment, and they are really fighting with them instead of helping them. And sometimes I would say an end-of-life doula can learn the behaviors of someone with cognitive impairment and make suggestions that can help with that end-of-life process.
Because they don't have the history with
They don't have the history. They're not trying to make mom still get up and get her nails done. You know, I think sometimes it can be really obvious she doesn't want to get up at 8 a.m. anymore. She's really clear about that. But somehow the daughter thinks that's really important still. And we can say, you know what, I think what your mom's trying to say is she doesn't really want to get up at 8 o'clock anymore. What if we see what happens if we let her sleep till 10? And things can change dramatically because of those 1 or 2 little things about just learning a person. I think that one of the things that people miss with dementia, that people without dementia miss about people with cognitive impairment, is that they still have a lot of wishes and desires, and we need to honor them. And I think that having someone who's trained in that to say, you know what, I've noticed that this person becomes very anxious when we do this. How about we not do this at the end of life? That can be really invaluable. And to have someone that is able to also, so many children put a lot of guilt on themselves that, oh, I'm taking care of my mother wrong, I'm doing the wrong thing. And even just to say, you know what, this is normal, you're doing a great job, this isn't about you, this is about something else. Those things can be really helpful in going through the process of watching a loved one, whether it's a spouse, a sister, a daughter, a mother, to just be able to have someone say, this is normal, this is not normal, how about we try this? If you don't have those things around you, sometimes there's a lot of guilt and resentment after someone dies even, that was horrible, it was awful. And if you can try and create an environment where they can say, wow, that was really great, I had a really good day, that's what we try to do with everyone. I want them to have a memory that lasts that's positive instead of a memory that lasts that's negative. So it can be helpful. If you have the right person that's really trained in cognitive decline, not every doula is trained in dementia, because they can be different. Good question. You're welcome.
When you create a log, create for this purpose, if I think of that and said, once I am dead, it doesn't matter what people say, because I'm gone. I'm not going to enjoy or feel sorry about it. But the family is the one who is going to say, gee, yeah, my dad did this, my dad did that. I don't want to even mention about my dad, depending on how the relationship was, and those things were. So, I guess Levy in his book says that basically, you think of your life, what you want to say is you pretend you are walking through the memorial service of you and going from the back to the front. You try to hear what people talk about you, which is how you want to judge. So, what is your view on how one should focus on?
I love that. Well, I agree that we should care about what legacy we're leaving. And there's a deal of thought that says that what we are leaving to our children is the example of the life we lived. So you could say a lot of things and do a lot of things, but how you live your life and how you plan your life, what decisions and choices you make in your life, they are what your children are watching and your friends are watching. And so what I think about when you're thinking about walking through that memorial of your life is, what did people watch and see? And did you set an example of how you want to live? And to me, I want to always just set an example of what I want for myself and what I want people to be talking about, hopefully, is that I created a lot of love in the world, and that love is spreading, that those positive memories are spreading to the next generation, so that they're continuing to spread love and positive memories to the next generation. So I want to do that to my last breath with intention. And I can tell you that when I see it done well, it's a really beautiful thing that parents are setting an example for their children. And when we don't talk about it, or we don't set a good example about it, it leaves this wondering, this anxiety of what is going to happen, and what ifs, and what if I talk to them. I can tell you my parents have a lot of that they wish they could have just talked to their parents, and they wish somebody had just told them to just be able to talk about things, because there was a generation that didn't talk at all about anything. And they have so many things they wish they could have said. Now that they're older, they go, why was I so afraid of saying anything? And so I think that when you can live an example, and I think my grandparents did a great job of doing a lot of great things and setting a good example, but when you can set an example of, this is the way I'm doing something with intention, it's a really special thing for your children to watch. So that's kind of the whole life. If you live your whole life that way, they're going to be saying a lot of good things at your funeral and your memorial.
My parents set really good examples for me on how to live and how to die. My father taught me not to make a God out of life. He taught me that there is a time when you have to acknowledge that you're dying, and he did that with grace. And my mother taught me that it's very important to bless the people that you love before you die. And those are two examples that I want to live out in my life.
I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. What a special parent.
And I think that's a really positive note for us to end on. So
I do too.
let's give a really, really big thank you to Amy Sweet for spending the evening with us.
Thank you so much.